Welcome everyone to another coffee tasting. I'm your host, Aaron Taylor, and today we are tasting another Stumptown coffee, one of my favorite coffee roasters. Today we are trying the Rwanda Huye Mountain, and with this one it is a single origin coffee with a conglomeration of 1,200 farmers. So we are going to taste this coffee today, and we're going to learn a little bit about this coffee after we taste it. So for those of you who are joining me for the first time, welcome. It is an honor to have you here. I'm honored that I have piqued your interest in coffee knowledge and the culture of the coffee, where we get to learn about the farmers and their culture. And if you guys are returning, welcome back. It is an honor that you guys are returning and back for some more knowledge and more coffee tastings. I greatly appreciate it. If you haven't had a chance to hit that like and subscribe button down below, please hit that like and subscribe button. It really allows me to make more content and make these videos that much more better. So thank you everyone for supporting this channel. It has gotten so much better since we first started, and it is getting a lot better as we progress forward. So we like to brew our coffee three different ways. The reason why we like to brew our coffee three different ways is so that we can explore the different coffee notes from the coffee from the different brew methods. So each different brew method is going to give us different flavor notes depending on whether or not we're using a paper filter pour over or a Chemex or a French press. And what that does is we're getting different amounts of oils and a different amount of sediments in each different brew method, and that is going to impact the flavor. And knowing this is very important because you might have a cup of coffee that's really good, but you might not have liked it because the brew method or might have been brewed improperly. So exploring the different brew methods, learning about what different flavor notes each brew method kind of brings forward is important, so that way you could enjoy each cup of coffee the way that you want to enjoy it. So each brew method is going to get a different amount of grinds and a different amount of water and a different grind setting. And it's kind of like a balancing act. So with the pour over, we're getting one of the finer grinds, but we're having the least amount of water and the least amount of contact with the water as well. So even though we have more surface area inside the grinds, contacting the water, having that brew method take place, we are having the least amount of time in the brew process, so it's a balancing act. While the Chemex, we have a slightly coarser grind, so there's less surface area, but because we're brewing a little bit more at a time, and then the double paper filter, the grinds come into contact with the water for a little bit longer of a time, so we are still getting that balance ratio of water to grind to proportion. And then with the French press, we are getting the coarsest of the grind, so we're having the least amount of surface area, but we have the most amount of contact time with the water with the French press. And so with the French press, we're going to submerge it in water to 4 to 5 minutes, and then we will be ready to plunge it. And then once you plunge it, it's pretty much no longer brewing because you've separated all the water from the actual grinds. So I'm really excited for this coffee because we are getting citrus notes with melon, and then we are getting a honey sweetness finish. And so this is kind of like a new trend that we're seeing in a lot of coffees lately, where it's a much lighter roast, almost more of like a tea flavor. And you see it a lot in the honey process coffee, where they leave the skin of the bean on the bean while they do the washing method. And what happens is that that parchment skin, kind of like on the outside of a peanut, what it does is it turns brown, kind of like an aging banana, and it caramelizes and turns into sugar, and that's what gives it that sweet melon flavor, or in this case, we're going to get a sweet honey mouthfeel. So we have citrus notes with melon and a honey sweetness. All right, so we are going to start the tasting off with the pour over. With the pour over, we have a single paper filter, so we're going to get less sediments and a little bit more oils versus the Chemex, where we're going to get less sediments and less oils, giving it a more balanced cup of coffee. So with this one, we're going to see a lot more of those bright citrus notes, and that melon flavor is really going to come out as well. Wow, that is a really sweet cup of coffee. We're definitely getting those intense citrusy flavors, and then it's got almost like that melon heaviness. It's got like an intense fruity flavor to it, and that's where those melon flavors are coming from. And then it's got like a almost like a syrupy mouthfeel towards the end, and that's where that honey sweetness comes in, where we're slightly getting like a honey sweet palate, and it's also heavy on the tongue like honey would be as well. That is really good, very unique. Definitely different than what we're normally used to when we get like a Latin American cup of coffee and we're used to those chocolate nutty notes. This, we're going on the complete opposite spectrum and we're getting those citrus and melon notes. Very different, really good. This would make for a great iced coffee for sure. We're gonna have to do an iced coffee taste testing next week for this one. That would be really good. All right, so let's go ahead and plunge the French press while we wait for the Chemex. So when you brew your pour over and your Chemex, one thing you want to make sure you do is you make sure that you let your coffee bloom. So what letting your coffee bloom does is you pour a little bit of water on the grinds, making sure that you get a lot of all your grinds wet, but you don't want to fully submerge it yet. And what that does is it allows the air in between each of the grinds to rise up to the top. Because if you pour too much water all at once, we're actually going to push that water down instead of letting it rise. And when you push that air down, we are creating a barrier at the bottom of the filter that is slowing down the brew process. And so for my Chemex, we're actually getting a slightly slower brew process than I should have, just because at the very beginning I poured a little bit too fast, so I didn't get the proper aeration. So if you guys saw me adjust the paper filter, that was just me allowing some of the air trapped in the sides and at the bottom of the filter, just letting it out to help the brew process continue its normal flow. Because if you don't adjust it, or if you don't let it bloom properly, you're gonna have a coffee that brewed too long, and when you over brew it, you're going to have over extracted flavors, and it's not going to taste the way it's supposed to. So making sure you let your coffee bloom and making sure you brew your coffee is very important. Luckily, I noticed that my coffee was taking a little bit longer to brew than it should, so I just kind of slightly nudge the paper filter a little bit to let some of that trapped air out to help the brew process continue its normal flow. Well, that actually helped. So we're gonna do the Chemex since that helped the Chemex finish up. So with the Chemex, it is a triple paper filter and it has a slightly coarser grind than the paper filter. And with this, we are getting less sediments and less oils. And with those less oils, it's going to be a more balanced cup of coffee, and it's going to change the flavor versus the pour over. So on the Chemex, it's interesting. The melon flavor isn't as intense as it was on the pour over. With the pour over, we were getting a lot more of those melon flavors, definitely some of those citrus notes, but primarily those melon notes. And then as the melon notes washed away, we got that honey sweetness. With this, we're getting like uh, the citrus flavors and the honey sweetness all in one go, and then we get like a subtle melon flavor at the very back of our tongue. Really good, super bright. That honey mouth feel at the very beginning with that citrus notes is very interesting. It is very different to what we are normally used to with coffee. That is for sure. I've never tasted a coffee like this, and it's very delicious, different but delicious. So we are getting some very intense citrus honey notes at the very beginning with subtle melon notes on the Chemex. Really good. That is a very sweet cup of coffee. No cream or sweetener necessary. It's like drinking a summer tea, like a sun brewed black tea. So with the French press, we are getting more sediments and more oils, and with those more sediments and more oils, we're going to be getting a flavor almost similar to the Chemex, but the flavor turned up a bit. Because with this, we're getting a balanced cup of coffee, but we are getting the flavor turned down because a lot of those oils and sediments are being absorbed. With this, we're still getting a balanced cup of coffee, but those flavor notes are being turned up because we're getting all those oils and sediments that would normally be absorbed in a paper filter. Very interesting. So, with the French press, the floral notes aren't as predominant as they are in the, well, not the floral, sorry, guys. The citrus notes aren't as predominant as they are in the Chemex, but we are still getting that heavy honey sweetness with a little bit of that melon flavor. So, the very initial sip on the French press, we're getting that bright citrus notes with that heavy honey sweetness, and then that subtle melon flavor as everything starts to wash away. Really, really good, you guys. I'm definitely going to try that iced for my next coffee tasting. That way we can explore what these flavor notes really do once they get poured over ice. So that is going to be very, very interesting. I think it's going to be really good just because we get those honey and melon notes with that citrus flavor. Those melon notes are really going to crisp up when we pour it over ice. Well, at least I suspect so. So I think it's going to be really good. So that is the Rwanda Oi Mountain from Stumptown's Coffee. And now that we've tasted the coffee, we are going to explore a little bit about the coffee itself. So the Rwanda Oi Mountain is from Ethiopia, Rwanda, and then the processing plant is owned and run by David Ruben Zangabo, sorry you guys, and he operates the Huye washing station with an emphasis on community and growth. And so with this processing plant, it has a strong dedication to the 1,200 farmers that it serves and provides a sustainable livelihood for these people. And so that's what makes this coffee so important is that we now know that the fact that this specific washing station provides or washes coffee for 1,200 farmers so that they can bypass another middleman who would end up uh, taking a little bit more money from the farmers. And so this is washing station is dedicated to the community that it sources its coffee from, and is dedicated to giving back to the community, and is dedicated to the growth of the community so that people can prosper in this area. And so that's what makes these kind of coffees so important in these single origins and the direct trade coffees is because we're sourcing our coffee directly from the farmers so that we know that they are getting the proper wages and the right amount of money so that they can maintain their livelihoods. And not only is just that important, but we are also getting the opportunity to learn our farmers. So in the opportunity where or in the event where there is a middleman where we never get introduced to the farmers, where they never get to tell the story of the farmers because it's just handed to a person and they roast the beans and then they give it to us, we never get to learn the story of the people who put this dedication and hard work into our coffee. So with these small log coffees and these single origins and the direct trades, we're not only getting a exemplary cup of coffee and supporting uh, livelihoods and all that, but we're also getting to learn and meet the people who grow our coffee and put this hard work into it. And that's one of my favorite parts about these coffees is being able to meet the people through the coffee by drinking the coffee. We don't get to physically meet them, but we get to meet them and learn their story through tasting their coffee and treating their coffee with respect, properly brewing it, and tasting the flavor notes they want us to taste. So that's how we pay tribute to the people who grow our coffee, is by really paying respect and learning the story of the people who grow our coffee. So if you guys enjoyed today's coffee tasting, thank you so much for joining me. It was an honor to have you all here. We will be doing a large series of the Stumptown coffee. I got a whole bunch of it in, so I'm super excited to share that with you guys. But for my next coffee tasting, we are actually going to be trying the Huye Mountain iced to explore the flavor notes as they get poured over ice. So join me this Tuesday as we go ahead and do that. Thanks again, everyone, for joining. I hope your coffee was just as delicious as mine was, and have a great day.